Making video games can be as intense as the games themselves. Long hours, high expectations, and the desire to deliver fans the best Unreal Tournament yet requires focus and dedication. For the artists, programmers, level designers, audio engineers, and support staff at Epic Games, making UT3 is not just a job, it's their passion.
Unreal Tournament 3 required the collaboration of dozens of talented individuals for a time period of over 2 years. The work that they were able to put together speaks for itself. It's a titanic effort to pull off a AAA game in 2007. We have this huge amount of collaboration and communication required to keep everybody productive, to keep them on track and working on things we need, not things that we don't. And that's really the cornerstone of my job, is making sure that everybody in this huge pool, not all in the same building even, or same city, have what they need to get their job done. That's something that I think a lot of people should understand, is that we're not just sitting down and working in our garage to crank out a game like Unreal Tournament 3. It requires an immense amount of planning, immense amount of coordination and teamwork, and strong talent from people with very different jobs. And so when you get that wonderful critical mass like we have here at Epic, where you have all these people who are, the top of their field in each of their jobs, but at the same time, great people and easy to work with and clear communicators, you're able to pull off the quality that we're known for.
I think we make good first-person shooter games because we're really passionate about them. We really care. All our developers will really go the extra mile and stay as late as needed to really get things right. And we have a very high bar for ourselves. We complain a lot more about our games than people complain about them once they get on the outside. I think that's critical, that you have to have people who really are passionate and really care about making a good game. The way that we build Unreal Tournament 3 is very much an iterative process, where we do playtests every day, and we've been doing that since the very beginning. The game was playable probably a month after we started working on it. And that's a really important thing. It means that every day we can play it and review where we're going, if things are working, if things are not. And you don't go 3 months and all of a sudden realize, oh my God, we've gone down the totally wrong path. And I think that's a really important part of what is going to make this game feel really polished and really tight. We try a lot of cool new ideas, and if they don't work, we cut them. And we don't hang on to stuff just because it sounded cool and we think we can make it cool and when they're dragging the game down. With Unreal Tournament 3, what we've really tried to do is go back and look at all the different variations of Unreal Tournament and think about what worked and what didn't work and what made them great. One of the things that we've done even recently, we go back, we play Unreal Tournament 3, and we'll go back and play the old Unreal Tournaments and see, have we missed something that was part of the essence of Unreal Tournament? Are we really extending the game and making it better in all ways? And that's really been our mantra, is we want to add a lot of new and exciting gameplay, but make sure that we're building on top of something that is still Unreal Tournament at its core.
We have mechanical artists, and they sort of alternate between vehicles and weapons, and just in general things that aren't organic, things that have sliding pistons and moving parts. We spend more polygons in our high poly models for the weapons in Unreal Tournament 3 than we did in the entire game of Unreal Tournament, like in one scene at any one time. We spent a lot of detail on our weapons, and it's because it's cool to have this thing right in front of you that shows you all the detail, and you've got proof that you're using great hardware right in front of you. So all our weapons, even though they're science fiction science, they look like they could work. They all articulate and move and open and charge up and discharge, and you can see every shot being loaded in, and we've got readouts that tell you the number of ammo that you've got left. These are the area of expertise for our mechanical modelers.
Hi, my name's Pete Hayes. I'm a 3D modeler here at Epic Games. I'm going to walk you through the process of creating one of the weapons, the impact hammer, from start to finish. And that's what we're going to take a look at today. Concept art. The rough poly model. Here's kind of my starting point. So we've jumped a little bit further down the line, add a little bit of detail. I'll start to add little nuances like the rivets, bolts, holes. People are getting a pretty good idea of what the weapon's going to look like. So a little bit further down the road, I want the first person to look good. what I call a proof of functionality animation. This is kind of the main attack where you charge it up and then impact hammer somebody, exploding them into bits. So once the high poly is done, I do what's called exploding the model. And then I do what's called a process. That's called a normal map. I'll reassemble the low poly. And that's kind of the finished product.
You know, there's a lot of disciplines that go into making a game like Unreal Tournament 3. We have level designers, and level designers are really where, you know, the fun is sort of gestated. That's where their job is to go and create these play spaces that even if they're just checkerboards, they're really ugly, you can still see the fun. You can still have the fun when you play it. And there's a lot of technical aspects to their job as well, namely they have to worry about performance. And so you can make the most beautiful map in the world, but if it runs at 2 frames, nobody's going to care. And so you have to do a nice trade-off between performance and visuals at all times.
Starting a level is kind of a daunting task for some people. A lot of people think that a level just gets made and is fun, you know, things kind of randomly come together. But there's really a very long process involved in getting a level to where it ends up. That involves the ideas of many different people and a lot of different hands touching it. You really start with a basic concept, whether it's a gameplay idea or a location or a trap or whatever it is that you really want to do. You just have to start with this basic core concept. From there, we do what's called shelling it out, which is really, really basic geometry, just flat walls, no decorations at all. Just get in there and play. We work very hard on game flow so that people are funneled down corridors to a specific point where there is a specific item that they need to pick up. Random example, tight corridors should have something like a flat cannon which can bounce around in that narrow space and help that person as they go through the corridor. So there's a lot of thought that gets involved not only into the way that the level is laid out, but where the items go that are in there. We just test it at that point. Test over and over and over until we're sure that it is fun as can be. When it's in that really basic state, it's very easy to say, oh, the game would be so much better if there was a door here instead of a wall. And we can just go in and subtract a hole and then boom, we've got a thing we can play in. During that phase, while we have the basic geometry in place and the concept in place, the level goes over to an art team. And we'll start with either coming up with a overview of how we want the area to look and feel, or maybe even go to a concept artist who will take a picture of that geometry and do a paint over. So they'll kind of paint architectural details and foliage or whatever it is on top of our basic geometry. And then starts this very long process of merging the two, where you have a team of artists that develop assets, whether it's textures and materials to static meshes to particle effects, and all that kind of slowly starts to come together and becomes what people recognize as a level. It's truly incredible to see these things really transform from this basic, untextured, blocky, ugly thing into this beautiful environment that's unbelievably realistic.
Well, I certainly think that Unreal Tournament 3 has a much more cohesive art style than any past Unreal Tournament. And one of the things that initially when we started going down this path, I thought, obviously it's a very good thing to have a cohesive art style, but I was kind of concerned that we were going to lose some of the uniqueness that Unreal Tournament was known for, of the huge variety of environments. And one of the really gratifying things that's turned out is, credit to the art director and art leads and art team, is that we still have this huge variety of environments and places you fight in, but it all feels much more cohesive. And it also gives you much more of a sense of place than in past Unreal Tournaments. All our levels really feel, as you play through them, you can really feel where you are. And now that we have this campaign mode where you're progressing through in sort of a geographically cohesive way, you really sense how you're moving forward. The levels itself feel like they fit together, as opposed to being a random jumble of cool-looking levels.
On the art side, we have a number of different disciplines. We have concept artists, and like I mentioned before, concept artists' main goal is to get a vision agreed upon before we really spend any significant time. And so it may sound like a lot of time to have someone work on concept arts for a week, but compared to the 3 months that often will be taken in creating the actual assets that are based off that concept art, it's a good trade-off. So it's just much easier to make modifications to something with a pencil than with 3D Max. We also have environment artists, and their main goal is to create those environments that the level designers use to mesh out their gameplay shells once they're happy with the gameplay. So all the arches, the statues with guys with swords, all that kind of stuff were from our talented environment artists. We also have character modelers or organic modelers, and they're very focused on getting, the human shape and not so human shapes down.
I'm Chris Wells, and I'm a character artist here at Epic Games, and I'd like to go through the process of creating a character with you. What I'd like to start out with is the concept phase, and here we have a character, Loke.
And this settles our grievances.
Once we have a concept that works, what we do is we take it into modeling, making a rough proportion model, separating the model into organic and hard surfaces. So once we have this as we want and have the proportions and the silhouette as we like, what we try to do here is really kind of push the detail. One of the things that we find helpful is to use detail to tell a story about a character. Once we're done at this phase, what we do is we work on the hard surfaces, which would bring us into the high poly section here. And here we have the finished high poly version right here. One of the things you want to keep in mind is to try to push the silhouette and make sure that there's always a lot of interesting shapes on the model that make it easily identifiable from a distance or when it's moving. At that point, it brings us into the editor, which we can see our final model right here. And that's how we create characters in a nutshell.
Hell yeah! This is my kind of fight.
The kind where we all die, Othello?
Don't worry, your brother's got a plan.
They also have to work very closely with animators to make sure that the creatures move right. The most beautiful character model in the world, the illusion will be dispelled like that if it doesn't move like what people would expect, and that's why we use mocap and technologies like that to ensure very natural and human-like motion. One of the real goals that we wanted to do in Unreal Tournament 3 with regards to vehicles was introduce a bunch of new vehicles without screwing ourselves from a balancing point of view. Unreal Tournament 2004 had 9 vehicles all told, and they were all pretty balanced, and so we wanted to bring those over into Unreal Tournament 3 with tweaks and improvements, but at the same time we wanted to come up with all these brand new vehicles. And the goal with them was to make a sort of like a separate but equal. So that's the way we approach the vehicles, or what are the traits that we think would facilitate balancing, but at the same time we could approach from different angles. And so if you think of a tank, it's got a very deadly primary fire, but a slow rate of fire. It's got a turret that traverses, so it deals with threats in any direction. It's heavily armored, it's slow. It's got a secondary turret that you can use for aircraft or fast movers that are exceeding the traversal rate of the turret. Those were the elements that make up a tank to us. And so on the Necros side, what we came up with is the Darkwalker. And the Darkwalker is unambiguously the main battle tank of the Necros. But the first thing you'll notice is it's not treaded. And so the treads on the Goliath, the Axon tank, really restrict where it can get. The Darkwalker is a tripod, and so it can actually climb up onto things and pull itself up in ways that we didn't initially expect. It also could crouch all of a sudden, and so you could do real world tank tactics like hull down, where only your turret is showing to the enemy and the rest of your tank is hidden by the environment. You can do that with the Darkwalker and actually have it crouch, pop up, fire, and then crouch back down. And so we were able to get all these tank-like elements into something that really didn't look like a normal tank, even though it fulfilled that same role. And it certainly allowed us to balance the game. Something that really surprised us, though, was in addition to the way it could traverse certain terrain, was that players just enjoyed going through legs of walkers. And so all of a sudden with the hoverboards, people would be like pulling tricks through this dangerous vehicle's legs and out the other side. Well, that just made the vehicle seem wimpy, which is the last thing we want this thing to communicate to the fans. And so what we decided to do was add this concussion effect that shoots out underneath it, ragdolling anyone. So if you're paying attention and someone goes between your legs, you can hit that, back up as they're trying to get up from being ragdolled and cook them out. And so that was a neat gameplay mechanic that we certainly didn't design. We just sort of saw the behavior and said, what should we do to address that? And then because of that, we came up with a new feature, a new weapon that actually is integral to the vehicle as the primary fire.
The Darkwalker early on was this silly looking, just a placeholder, a ball with some tentacles hanging out from him. And I started playing around with it, and then I showed other people, and everybody got really excited about it. And we started putting in play tests, and we went through all kinds of different firing modes for it and everything until we found, oh, this, the one that was perfect. And the day we put it in with the big beam of fire that just, vaporizes people, was we realized that that was it.
In this version of UT3, we wanted to give the player a better visual indicator of how the vehicles would be damaged in the process of the game. So we've implemented a damage system, so that as the vehicle's taking hits and damage, it's starting to crumple, it's starting to look charred and burnt. Small fires start to appear in specific places, you start to get sparks coming from the wheel, and then once it gets towards the end of its health, you have pieces coming off, and then you really know that this thing is about to blow up and you have to get out. And then ultimately, once the vehicle has reached the end of its health, the whole thing just blows up in a massive explosion. And it's totally awesome. Like, it feels really good to just have a vehicle just blow up in your face, and it drives you to go and smash up other vehicles.
So making those new vehicles and making them really fit into Unreal Tournament was one of the big things that we've added. And I think people will appreciate how much it extends the gameplay and how much it deepens the experience when they get their hands on it.
When audio production begins for a game such as this, and trying to build a map from silence up to complete sound, a lot of work and a lot of time is spent. One of the aspects of audio that I like are the ambient sound passes that were made in the maps. In UT3, we actually did a full uncompromised sound pass on every map, and so when you're in the maps themselves, they all have a unique sound to them.
In keeping with the idea that we were trying to extend Unreal Tournament in all directions and really polish every asset of it, one of the things that we also focused on was a dynamic music system, and which is certainly more of a challenge in a multiplayer game where you really have no idea what's going to happen next.
And so for each of the music tracks, what we did was we had each of the composers record a full mix of the track from start to end as if it was being recorded for an album. But for the in-game music, we had the composers go back and break the music track into 6 different emotional-based segments. And so this was an attempt to have the music have more relevance to the gameplay within the game and actually provide an emotional context for the user as they're playing the game. Okay, cool. So we're working on the UT3 cinematics at the moment, final stages of development, and working on the Necrus Attack cinematic, which occurs about halfway through the game with music mix only. Once we get the dialogue and all the sound design and Foley in here, it's going to be a pretty busy, exciting mix.
Unreal Tournament 3 was a real passion product for the team here at Epic Games. Normally you have to make a lot of compromises to get your game done, but we were really able to deliver on the goals that we set out at the onset of the product. Everything that we set out to do, we more or less accomplished, and we love the final product.
This is the best that we've done so far in terms of the Unreal franchise.
Unreal Tournament 3 is a game that we really poured our hearts into, and we've been passionate about making it and about making the best possible game. And we really hope that the fans who buy this game, enjoy it and appreciate it and love it as much as we've loved making it.